Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of the Golden Years Retirement Community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show, we'll revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Ike Eisenmann and Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Pop Culture Retro. I'm one of your hosts, Jonathan Rosen, along with my co-host, the man who regrets agreeing to do this segment, Ike Eisenmann. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. Regret is a heavy word. I don't regret being tasked with anything that I would normally never actually do on my own. So, it's
So, I'll have to explain, all right, because we're doing another segment, another edition of Forgotten Films. And as we've said before, it sort of has devolved into each one of us wanting to torture the other one. I'm going to quantify this by saying that I don't think anything that I will ever pick will match Ike's choice of Shakes the Clown, but I'm going to sure as hell try.
Well, it's like I love that I've been able to challenge you in some way, because who knew? I mean, who knew? And the thing is, going back to just Shakes for a moment, I didn't expect to hate it as much as I hated it this last time I saw it, because I had such fond memories of the darkness and oddity of that movie. But I did not know it was actually going to elicit such a visceral reaction in you. And so, wow. Yeah, cut you off at the knees. Good luck standing up again.
No, you did. I like I said, I'm going to try. I don't think I'm going to match it, but I will try. This one we're going to talk about today. My choice was the 1981 box office bomb comedy, Honky Tonk Freeway. Many might not even remember the film, which is why it's a forgotten film, because it was only in the theaters for 1 week. I don't know if you read all the backstory on it along the way while watching this. What happened?
Not along the way, because I just wanted to experience it. Then I wanted to do a little research, but I read a very, very interesting. I can't even figure out what year it was written, but an examination of Honky Tonk Freeway as some sort of, we'll get to all that later, but I read that, which gave a great deal of background about I'm going to ask you,
because we'll get to that in a second, because I want to ask you when we do that, because you being on that side of the business, you can explain a lot of the things that happen there, because I'm kind of getting it, but I want to get your take on it too. But I'll
sure.
To go on the plot. Yes, the plot here is, basically it's the fictional Florida town of Ticklaw wants an exit ramp off the highway that will lead directly to them because it'll help increase tourism. All right, the mayor, played by William Devane, goes through shady methods to get it done, starting with bribing government officials. These are just some of the stories, because there were a lot of other side characters along the way, side stories that all converged into the one place. There was, bank robbers on the run, a woman who was taking her mother's urn to spread ashes in Miami, a nun who was contemplating leaving the convent, and many more. I think that they showed the tag as being Nashville on wheels was the tag. On paper, I think this should have been a huge hit, because you look at the director and the cast. The director, John Schlesinger, the cast here: William Devane, Hume, Cronyn, Jessica Tandy, Beverly D'Angelo, Beau Bridges, Howard Hessman, Geraldine Page, Daniel Stern, and even Paul Jabara, who wrote many of Donna Summer's songs and wrote some of the songs for this as well. And I went back watching. I did like a lot of the songs in here. I really did, but.
That right there is irredeemable at the top.
Yeah, so. Looking at the cast, it probably should have been a huge hit, and it tanked. It tanked big time. So before I go into anything, Roy, let's get your initial thoughts.
Well, the funny thing is I watched it in two parts. I had to interrupt my screening time and then come back to it later in the day. And I started watching it.
Did you force yourself to go back to it?
I said, no, I did not force myself. See, that's the shocking thing. There's a lot about this movie I like. Now,
Okay.
it is a true train wreck in every sense of the word at the end of the day. But I started it and I said, I love this premise. This premise is fantastic. It 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 covered so many interesting things that intrigued me, and I could tell, obviously, immediately I could tell it was a farce, and I love farces, and over the top comedies of this sort I've always enjoyed. So I thought, I know I'm going to get something out of this. But it became what I when I came back to finish it, which was the bulk of it. I probably only watched about 30 minutes before I walked away, and then I had well over an hour to finish, and it just became more and more and more absurd, more and more ridiculous, and less and less funny. Even though I laughed out loud a couple times, I wish I'd taken note of what I laughed out loud at, because it surprised even me. There were moments that were just like, okay, that's really hilarious. And I was just overwhelmed with the cast, because I went into it knowing absolutely nothing. I didn't look up anything at all. I just sat down and watched it, because that's what I truly love to do with movies that I know nothing about, is just experience them. Wasn't positioned for it. I did not know what it was about. I didn't even glance at the little blurb on Prime Video when I rented it. And I thought one of the profound things I think I experienced, which I do with movies like this, especially made by powerful people. I mean, let's look at John Schlesinger, Midnight Cowboy, for goodness sakes. I mean, one of the most important films ever made, let alone Best Picture of 1969, coming from a filmmaker that's got very interesting perspectives about many different things, and brings those to bear in his movies. And you've got Marathon Man, and I think it was right after, I think this was right after Marathon Man. I'm going to look just because I can. No, Yanks was after that, and then he produces this train wreck of a movie. And and it felt very much, I mean, some of the background I read, of course, it's 1980, 81. You've got Animal House, you've got Caddyshack, you've got these other really funny classic, what do you call them? Just practically slapstick comedies that are huge successes. And it seemed like an answer to that in a way. And I'm always fascinated when something just doesn't work, because if you're not full bore, if you miss the mark by 2 or 3%, especially with a comedy, it's just, there's nothing funny about it. And yet the performances were fantastic. Everybody was so good. So I enjoyed watching all of that, but I couldn't resolve the horrible direction with the horrible writing. I mean, and the writing wasn't horrible. It just missed the mark. And so you add all that up.
I think that's his only credit, by the way.
His only screenplay credit. It is, because he was writing for Jay Leno, and then he went before that and went on to write for some other TV thing. I don't know. And then he just disappeared completely. So this did him no favors for his career either. And we should be fair and mention his name, because he did write it.
Clinton,
Edward Clinton, yes, Edward Clinton, who I just, when I saw the name, I thought, okay, gotta look this guy up, because I don't know anything about him. And did he ever do anything else ever again of note? No, not at all.
Right.
So yes, my overall broad strokes are, I love the premise, because there's something I have some sort of interesting obsession. I kind of call it a storytelling fetish. I love weird worlds. I love the idea of anything that takes place in a circus or a carnival, or an alternate kind of world that most of us don't experience, because we all live in larger, in probably larger communities in the United States. But when you go to a small town and you examine the dynamics of a small town anywhere in the US and in the United States, it feels like you're entering into a very interesting eccentric world. And so I liked that immediately, because films like, Miss Firecracker, I absolutely adore. And just, and you would have thought Happy Texas would have been one of those for me, but it actually wasn't a look inside of a small town, even though it sort of was trying to do that. It didn't pull me in the way that, like, the dark corners and strange things that happen when a town needs to, do what it needed to do, was get tourism there. And they were being cut off from it completely. Now, okay, I'm going to be hypercritical, first of all, and say there's no reason on the planet that small town should have been denied a freeway off-ramp, okay? Because number one, the feds don't pay for it. The state doesn't pay for it. I think, and I could be mistaken, I'm happy to stand and be corrected. An off-ramp is paid for by the community taxes that it's,
I would have no idea on this.
I'm not 100% sure either, but either way, taxes are going to support this. So it's not like some freebie that's given away or a favoritism that's given away. You want it to feed the local community. So the whole setup initially for me was like, okay, why are they being denied this? Just because this guy's being petty? They didn't even give a reason. Now, and so therefore the entire premise then got weak to me. And I thought, had there been a legitimate reason, had William Devane's character, who's the head of this town and he does everything in it, and he's the one who spearheads the major effort for this off-ramp, maybe if he'd slept with the council person's wife, then I would say, hey, you got a real problem here, pal. But he was a really pure character, so you can't set it up that way. So I'm not here to solve the problem, because it's long gone and dead. But even in a farce, you got to have a very real inciting incident as to why this is happening or it isn't happening. And then anything you do after that is okay with me. I will go along for the ride. So that was just the first kernel of like, God, if you'd just done that, I'd have been fine with it. So just to be flatly refused, even after a bribe is paid to get the off-ramp, it's just like, oh, okay, well, let's see where it goes from here. Now, unlike you, like I said, I just freaking hated the music. I hated the songs. They came up and I was like, oh, good God. I mean, even Smokey and the Bandit, I hate it when a song comes up in the middle of a movie. And I think back to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid all the time. This brilliant, beautiful, amazing film. And right in the middle, Raindrops Keep Falling on Your Head pops up out of nowhere over a montage. And it's like, I would have loved it if they could have gone back and recut that film and just removed it so that we could enjoy it straight through. So anyway.
I did not think Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head fit in well in that movie too. I do agree with you on that. Here, yeah. I disagree with you. I did think, because it was a different context. It was not a montage type thing with a putting in music. I just thought it accompanied what was going on screen. And you're going to be even hating this more in a second. I've looked, I do have the album of Honky Tonk Freeway, but I've looked for it on CD or like Spotify for years and I cannot find it anywhere. I'm still trying to get it. So I still am going to try to find it at some point.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, I seriously doubt they would have spent any money on an album. You say that this did exist at one point?
Yes,
or you're just
yes. No, I do have the vinyl. I have the vinyl.
You're kidding.
Of this. No. So
that's extraordinary.
I'll say this again. Because the song at the end, the Paul Jabara song at the end, Faster, Faster, I love that song. I just love that song. And I do like the other songs along the way, but I can't find it anywhere. There was someone that had it against a digital file somewhere once on their site, and I can't find it now. I'm going to keep looking for it. So I'm going to try to download it. But here's the thing. It was only in theaters for 1 week. I saw it in that 1 week.
I know. I was getting ready to say, because you mentioned that before, what on earth prompted you to go see this movie?
I remember my cousin wanted to go see it. And we were living in Florida at the time, St. Pete. And my cousin wanted to go see it. So I went with him to see it in that 1 week. And the following week, it was already gone. It was out of the theaters. And I remember kind of even enjoying it. Because, well, I was a kid, but I remember even kind of enjoying it because it is like silly humor, a lot of it. And I did enjoy it. And looking back, and when I watched it now, I have to admit, I know it's a stupid movie. It's terrible. It's a terrible movie. But I had fond memories watching it again because I have not seen it in many, many years. But I had fond memories watching it because of remembering it, seeing it as a kid.
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, it's a stupid movie, but there's nothing wrong with that. Stupid and terrible just do not go hand in hand together. You can make it as stupid as you want, but oh, man, make it funny. But I again, going back to the cast, I love the cast. I mean, oddly enough, Geraldine Page is brilliant in this. She plays a nun, and she's traveling through Florida, going, I don't even remember where they were going, with another nun who drives the
apprentice
car.
nun, I guess.
And Geraldine Page is just like, it is a true testament to what a brilliant actress she was, by how interesting and subtle and uncomfortable a character she was able to portray in a ridiculous farce like this. I loved William Devane. I've always liked William Devane anyway, but I thought he was fantastic. He was just fantastic as the, essentially the lead character in this, and the driving force behind it all. But so, like, everyone, I mean, you got Jessica Tandy and Hume Cronyn playing their quintessential perennial old married couple picking on each other for one reason or another, and then everything changes. And and Jessica Tandy was fantastic. I mean, she plays I have to say, she plays this alcoholic that refuses to believe she's an alcoholic. And they sit down to lunch on the road, and she orders 5 Manhattans as her lunch. And the conversation is just hilarious. And her insistence that, well, she doesn't eat the oranges, so that doesn't make her an alcoholic. All the little things she mentions and justifies, and she's just so delightful. And so there are redeeming values to this movie that are worth watching it. I hope we can get behind the the station wagon and create some inertia for this vehicle to perhaps make its way to a little cult classic status, because it doesn't seem, I mean, it gets attention. Like I said, this article I read was not so much a review, but it was kind of a review about how anti-American this movie was, and how it was perceived that way by the executives at Universal. I guess it was Universal, and it got into just political stuff that I thought, okay,
I did not find it that way. Really, I thought it was just showing a slice of America to me when I was watching it.
Well, that's how I felt. That's why I liked it, because, again, going to my previous point about liking these different worlds, Florida has a history, I know, and I haven't looked into it that deeply, but a history of all these strange little amusement parks and sightseeing places scattered all up and down the state to stop people along the road on their way to Miami, which is where everybody pretty much wants to go most of the time. And so there's a history of that here. So to have this little town, fighting for a piece of that by having a safari zoo or safari, I forgot what they called it, with the animals and the lions and the elephant.
The big draw was the water skiing elephant. That was the
water
big
skiing
draw.
elephant. Yeah. I mean, that's so truly typical of weird Florida. And there's a book called Weird Florida that documents these. And I've yet to read it. I've seen it. I'm threatening to.
So good. It's good.
Yeah. I need to get it, because it just sounds fantastic to me. So yeah.
I will. If you want to go look at it, by the way, Mount Dora is the place it was filmed for. That's what Tickler substituted for. And Mount Dora is like a big destination now. It's a lot of
Oh
people
God,
go there
yeah,
now.
yeah. I've been to Mount Dora a couple of times. So, but even just the footage that Schlesinger got of the building of a freeway, because it actually did look like those shots were Florida. I mean, I don't know what freeway it actually was, but
I-75, they said.
Really? Seriously? Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
All right.
now I want to just touch about the behind the scenes, why it was only in the theater for 1 week. Now,
Yeah.
did you read that backstory? Did you read that part?
I read some information. So whatever you want to share with me and ask me the questions, and I'll do my best to answer
Well,
from
here's the thing.
what
Okay,
I
so
know.
they said this was the whole scheme. They sold the ancillary rights to a German investor in need of a tax loss. That's what I was reading, in an effort to try to recoup some of their money, some of their loss. But when the movie's distributors learned this, they were no longer, they said, financially motivated to distribute the movie widely, and then therefore only released it 1 week and pulled it.
Yeah.
So what does that entail? What does that all mean?
Well, the version I read was when this film was finally finished and screened for the Universal executives, they stood up and started screaming, "What the hell is this? What the hell? This is horrible. This is absolutely horrible. This is again, according to this source, they just thought it was anti-religion, anti-American. We can't do, we can't have this. Why would you make a movie like this?" And accused John Schlesinger, who's British, of having an anti-American agenda in making this film. And they were so angry about it that they refused to pay for advertising. They just were not going to advertise it flat out. And so, that's enough to kill a movie. You just see a poster pop up, you have no idea what it is. And why would you go see that unless you're Jonathan Rosen? So
I was the one.
To my mind, that I mean, from what I read there, not my mind, and this does happen at the end of the day. One of the things about every single movie that's made, it goes all the way to the executive level, and then that's the point at which the distribution company and the studio, if they're one and the same or two different companies, they then say whether or not they are going to get behind it. And no one knows, no matter what kind of deals are made, because anything can be killed. I mean, contemporarily, you're looking at, is it Batgirl that got shelved?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's never going to come. It's never going to come out.
Right.
It's never going to come out because someone finally decided, either this movie's not good enough, or it's not worth the investment, even given what we've already spent on it. And this business is like any other business. You build a real estate development that isn't made well enough, and it doesn't attract the rents and fees and customers that you need to have it move forward. Sometimes these things are just killed or sold off to somebody else as a tax write-off, and then they try to figure out what to do with it on their own if they have other ideas, et cetera, et cetera. So this happens in all kinds of different businesses. What I don't know about selling the ancillary rights off, but that's probably the reason why there was an album. I was going to say, why would they spend any money pressing an album of the soundtrack if the movie didn't earn $1? It didn't make sense. So that's part of the ancillary rights, I'm guessing, that this German company bought, and they probably went ahead and produced it because they've got names or whatever associated with that, and etc. But that's my best guess.
I was thinking it's like all the video rights, and if they were like putting it to the VHS rights, I don't even remember if video was like even that we did a special, and I don't remember even was video even starting then?
80 just barely starting. And I have to go 8 because released in 81. the thing that there were always forward thinking people who realized what ancillary rights could possibly be worth for anything. And quite often some of these companies, they won't just pick up one movie like this. They'll buy a studio's library of failures. Because European audiences are different are different than American audiences. We learned that about Phantom of the Opera, Phantom of the Paradise in Canada, which is not Europe, it's Canada. But the fact that it was such a huge hit in a portion in an area of Canada is absolutely hilarious and fascinating. And many, I mean, even David Hasselhoff is still an amazingly huge, star in Germany, and no one really knows why. So there's a quirkiness about, we have our American sensibilities. I will say that is something that we definitely have, and other parts of the world are attracted to different things. So these companies, if they can release an American film in Europe with all those stars in it, no doubt people will probably go see it, even if they don't get it. So there's just all kinds of opportunities. And then of course, once video hits, they'll release it on video and then see what happens there. But that's a blurry time frame for me, because I can't remember. It seemed like by 82, 83, I was renting movies all the time. They were available. So I could be wrong, of course, about that timeline.
Because they sold, that's what prompted. So your explanation that you said that that the producers just hated it and wanted to pull it. But so I was curious, by selling the ancillary rights out from under them, that leaves no reason for them to keep promoting this movie then, right? I mean, just no reason at all for them to do it.
No reason at all, because then God forbid it becomes a hit and they've already sold the rights away. They won't make any future money on it. So they were just looking. It was a clearinghouse. Obviously, it sounds like a clearinghouse thing. Someone wants to buy it. Here's the price. If you want it for that, good. And then they just try to absorb the loss, because it was a $24 million film. I mean, it wasn't a cheap movie. And I can't imagine.
Supposed to be only a couple of million. They said this budget kept rising while they were doing it.
Oh my God. Well, yeah, that happens also. So, it's a crazy business. Crazy business.
No, like I said, I did enjoy it again here. I remember, I think we talked about this in a previous special. That was around the time, a little bit afterwards, is when we first got cable for the first, I was amazed when we first got cable. This was on all the time. This was running all the time when I first had
and
it.
That's part of the ancillary rights.
Yeah. So like I said, I saw it in the theater, but then I saw it many, many times after. And I probably have not seen it all the way through since the 80s. I've watched bits and pieces here and there. Again, I will go on YouTube, go watch, play that song again at the end. But this is the first time since the 80s, probably since I watched it all the way through. Like I said, I do have fond memories watching it, just because it brought me back to that time. Looking at the movie, we've talked about this before. Looking at it, it's definitely, you see the visuals quickly, when it's made. The time frame that it is, just because of the way everything works. So it did bring me right back to that, time seeing as a kid. So again, I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it at all. But I was laughing while watching it, thinking, "Oh, Ike's really going to hate this movie." I'm surprised that you didn't hate it as much as I thought you would. But I did have fond memories watching it again.
Well, it's again, I love discovering films like this, because what I didn't expect was there's to be so many stars in it. I just thought it. I
forgot too, by the way, that how many.
Yeah, I mean, I just didn't expect that, and it's the thing is, nobody sets out to make a bad movie. Nobody does. That's there is no real world version of the producers in Hollywood, where some filmmakers are intentionally trying to make a bad movie. Everyone's always trying to put their best work forward, and so it's again always fascinating to me when things work, as much as it is fascinating to me when things don't work.
Well, here's a question for you then there. I don't think you've ever been in anything that went to like this level. So, but we could talk about even like on maybe a Fantastic Journey, I'll say the only thing that's possible. Looking at the cast here is looking at the cast here, that this was everyone while doing this, looking at all these stars and celebrities. I'm sure everyone thought this is going to be not only just a major hit, this is going to be up for many awards because of the cast that was involved with it, the director and the cast. And even that tag, Nashville on Wheels, if they're giving that tag to it, and Nashville is like a highly acclaimed film. So if they're saying that, everyone, what's the reaction when you're thinking you're part of something that's going to be huge, and then it's just cut out from under you, that everyone is like, wow, this is really not going to work. So that's the
no, I was gonna say, well, it's devastating because part of of course I would have to research this to see where each of these actors were in terms of their careers at the time they did this movie, but they were already established. Beau Bridges had been established. I worked with him in 74, 75, and he was already a movie star at that time. William Devane was known. Everyone was known. They were known. Yeah. And you don't attract. I mean, a lot of I used to kind of think, well, if you're being offered a role and they're going to pay you well, you do it. And it took me a while, of course, moving into my adult career before I realized, no, actors, stars, people in the business make decisions based upon the material, what it's going to not only pay the bills now, but what it's going to do for their career. And they also look at, well, who else is involved? Because I swear every star will say that. Well, who else is involved? And then you get excited because you think, oh my gosh, we got Beverly D'Angelo, and you've got William Devane and Beau Bridges. Well, sure, I'll be a part of that. And everyone reads the material, and then everyone decides if they like it and how much they like it, and then you put all of that together, and it seems like a recipe for success. It does. It absolutely does. And so then when it just vaporizes like that, it is devastating. Now you're a part of something that failed miserably, and everybody blames you, no matter who you are in it. That will kind of follow you for a while, and so then everyone jumps in really hard to do a follow-up something so that they're not remembered for the horrible movie that was only in theaters for a week, directed by John Schlesinger. So I know it did affect John Schlesinger's career, even though he continued to work.
Does that affect the director more than the actors?
Yeah, it does, because the director's really, at the end of the day, responsible for the movie, not even the writers so much, because a writer can only write so well, and then a director's got to figure out how to interpret all of that and guide the performances and make it whatever it's going to be. And it very much comes out of their head. Directors still have power to have the screenwriters do rewrites and change things and work on things and etc. So you really and this is another thing that's sort of controversial in Hollywood. There was a period of time, and I don't remember when it started, but directors got more and more power because they were, and I truly believe this is true, they were responsible for what the film is or isn't. And when a director has a string of successes, then the director's the first person you hire, someone like that for your next project. And so directors started to negotiate, and I forgot what the term was called, like a proprietary credit, where in advertising, in TV commercials advertising a film, it will say a film by, we're going to excuse John Schlesinger, a film by John Schlesinger. And because the name recognition was so high, and it was very true for a long period of time in Hollywood. And then writers started getting upset, and even producers started getting upset, and actors started getting upset, saying, well, the director's not the only person involved in this. We were there too. We contributed too. And then they started to eliminate that that designation from trailers and ads and things like that. So that's the long answer to your question. Yeah, I think the director is the one who's responsible at the end of the day, and all those good actors couldn't make it work. And it's questionable, obviously back then and even today, whether the writing was worth the cast and someone like John Schlesinger coming in and directing it. But they all read the script. They had to love it at some level. But it is yeah, it's a huge disappointment when it doesn't turn into what you think it's going to turn into. And there's movies like MASH. I don't know much about the history of MASH, but there's so many films that are edgy and so completely different that even as you're making them, you're not exactly sure if it's going to be a hit. No matter who's involved, you're thinking, God, what on earth am I working on? Well, all I can do is do the best I can do and see what happens. And, there's many more instances where they don't work and they fail, like this one, than there are instances where they go on to become huge cinematic classics or huge box office successes.
I read an interview with Schlesinger afterwards, after the fact, about it. And he was shocked that this did not do well. It seemed like he thought he was very defensive about it. He thought that that people missed the mark on it. And he was like, of course, really defending it.
Of course. I mean, I completely get that. I will admit that I didn't turn it down because I did not get the job, but I was considered for a role in Porky's, and I remember reading the script and I just said, what kind of piece of crap is this? I don't get this at all. I really don't get it at all. But I went in, did my best. I had a couple callbacks, and then however they shaped their cast, but Porky's is still a classic screwball comedy. I guess that's what they were called, screwball comedies, or just over the top, borderline offensive comedies. And I didn't understand it. So there's that.
You have told me that before. First of all, do you remember which part you were up for?
No.
Okay, because you told me that before, and I found that fascinating. I loved, like, Mr. Clean Cut was up for I love it.
Well, that's probably why I didn't, whatever part it was, that's probably why I didn't get it, because it just didn't work.
Well, to me, that's why they should have cast you, because to go against that type. But I love Porky's, and we should need to do something on Porky's one day. I love Porky's. I still watched it many times, and I've been trying to get a couple of people from that movie on here. Hopefully we'll be able to one day. But I would love to go through that story, that whole process with you. I didn't bring it up because I wanted to do it specially then, but I would love to go through that all the time to Porky's with you. So,
well, yeah, and again, I haven't. I'm trying to think if I actually have ever seen the movie. I don't know that I have. Yeah, seriously. I mean, I was so not interested in those kinds of movies. So perhaps that, and it's not a forgotten film, so we can't do that, but we could.
No, it's not a forgotten film. We'll have to do it.
We could cover it, and that would force me to see it. And then, maybe it will shake some memories loose for me. But yeah, not 100% sure about that.
I find Porky's, and I don't want to digress too much into it. I find it a very funny movie. And I always love the movie, and if we ever get any one on, I'll talk about that more. But because one of the things in that movie, one of the storylines was about the Jewish kid that was picked on and defends himself in that movie. I did love that movie. I always resonated that back then. Besides it being a very funny movie in general, it would never get made today. It would, never.
No.
People would be offended by it. And there's certain scenes in particular, and saying, oh, that's, disgusting, gross, and, they'd be anti-men, but it's still a very funny movie.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm digressing too much. So,
That's okay.
yes. But anyway, no, I enjoyed this. Again, I'm glad we got to go back and revisit Honky Tonk Freeway. I can only imagine what you'll pick next, but I was happy that we got to do this one again. So
I'm gonna have to work hard. This is not gonna be easy all of a sudden, because you've seen so many more movies than I have. So I'll have to dig through. I think I'll have to dig through my list of titles that I worked on, because so many of those I never bothered to watch because I knew they were going to be
I probably have seen more, but every single time you brought one up for this, I've not seen it. So every single one has been
okay. All right. Well, there you go. There you go.
Let us know in the comments what all of you think. If you remember, even if you remember this movie at all, first of all, and did you like it, not like it? And just give us some of your general thoughts. And as always, thanks for watching. And this has been Jonathan Rosen along with Ike Eisenmann for Pop Culture Retro. And please subscribe.
Thank you for listening to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast.